You're all over Mike. Oh man, I would love to be all over Mike. You ever see him? Man, and whenever he puts that fake mustache over his face with that face app thing, want to give him a mustache ride, you know what I'm saying?
Hello my friends and welcome to the ultimate dungeon guide. This guide will turn you from a hell no to a what a pro in only 20 minutes. So stay tuned and enjoy the video. I realized many support players know the very basics of what they are supposed to do, but they lack a few tricks that would help them to consistently beat floor 10 every time. Then what happens if you don't beat floor 10? Right, you blame RNG. But normally you don't have to, because you can really make your RNG better if you do the right moves. So that's what this video is all about. For me it's easy to say, because I have endgame gears and units and shit. So to prove my points, I am playing with Sky today. He is a free-to-play player and he really doesn't have high fancy shit. He has a level 11 Zealot, he has very shitty items, and he's also using Trainer. It's obviously much easier if you have Gadget, even on level 1, but it also works perfectly fine even without any of these fancy things, as you will see in this run. There are different ways and decks you can run through floor 10 as a free-to-play player, which I will cover later on in this video. In this example I am using the Reaper support deck, which is one of the best decks if your damage dealer isn't very strong. I will just walk you through the different stages of a dungeon run. I've split that in 3 different phases, like the early game, the mid game and the late game. So let's just start with the early game, which is like wave 1 till 6. If the damage dealer is weak, especially with this deck that we're playing currently, copy some summoners to get Reapers on your board that help early on a little bit to the damage dealer. If he's struggling to set up his board really quick, then the Reapers can do some work so we don't die on wave 4 or 5 already. Just make sure you do this without sending a shaman. This is really important. And yeah, if you get stuck because your board is full of shaman, bad RNG, but normally you don't really need Reapers in the first place, but it does help out your damage dealer, especially if he's very low level, like in this case. Make sure to upgrade Reapers as well, and then just chill out and wait for the sign. Normally it's like a thumbs up button for most of the players. That means their damage dealers are ready and you can send the shamans. Some use like the shaman sign, but not everybody has this. Once your damage dealer is set up and gave you the sign to let the shaman rain come, you will want to send as many shamans as possible till like wave 30. And the way you do this is you use every Harlequin and every mime that you can on a shaman. That's where a lot of people do mistakes. They want to copy summoners, they will use mimes on summoners just to get an overall more value on your side of the board, which is not a bad thing, especially in PvP for example. But in Coop, the only way you contribute to the success of the dungeon run is if you buff your friend on the other side that is actually a damage dealer, that is actually taking down the bosses and so on. So you don't need to be a very high tier with whatever, you just need to send as many shamans as possible. So basically look at Mime and Harlequin as a shaman and use every Mime and every Harlequin that you can to be a shaman. Don't copy summoners, only copy shamans if possible. Always need to keep a tier 1 and always keep a tier 2 shaman. The reason for this is whenever you get a Harley, if you drop down a unit, it becomes a Harley, you will always have the possibility to make out of this Harley a shaman. If you waste your last tier 1 shaman, then RNG might doesn't give you another shaman for the next 20 drops. So you get like 6-7 Harlequins and you don't have a shaman to copy, and you need to copy summoners with these Harlequins, or in the worst case you get 7 Harlequins and 7 mimes, and you just don't have anything to copy it really. So make sure you always have a tier 1 as well as a tier 2 shaman, so you can always copy them. But never ever get rid of your tier 1 shaman or your tier 2 shaman. This alone already makes you a much better supporter and gives you like, don't know, 30, 40, 50% more shamans on that run, because yeah, you will just always be able to copy and send shamans. If you get too many mimes on the board because RNG hates you, then you can, in a rare case, just use the mime with summoners. It's like a neutral trade. I don't lose anything really, because you will get a unit for it again, which can be a shaman, but you also don't gain anything, because there will not be a shaman flying to the other side whenever you merge a summoner. Once you hit wave 31, the end game starts pretty much, because the wave have a shit ton of HP and there are a lot of monsters running down the road. And sometimes if you have just a single target damage unit on the other side, like in this case the Sealet, then it can be very hard to get rid of all these HP bars from all the tiny little monsters, especially as they also stun the board of your damage dealer and so on. And that's where you normally switch onto a Reaper board. So slowly try to convert your board to as many Reapers as possible, because they don't care about the amount of HP of the little creeps. They will just insta-kill them. And your partner can focus on the bosses, and he doesn't have to deal with the millions of HP of the little creeps. And that sometimes breaks your neck if you don't do this, because the little minions will just overwhelm your damage dealer. And with the Reaper you can help him out a ton, especially on the waves between 31 and 40. So basically the priorities change starting at wave 31, because you hopefully sent already enough shamans, and here you slowly start to convert onto a Reaper board. Like Reaper is your highest priority now to have him on the board. If you get like a tier 5 Harlequin and you have a tier 5 Reaper, obviously copy the Reaper and help out your friend. So let's talk about some alternative decks that will just work as fine as the Reaper deck. The important thing is that you have always the same core, which is Mime, Harlequin and Shaman, which is basically 3 Shamans. That's the thing that I explained earlier, and that really is the core of any good support deck. The last 2 remaining units you can pretty much use whatever you feel like it. There are some very good units that have very nice synergy. The first that I recommend the most is Summoner, because whenever you merge a Summoner, you merge 2 units and you get 2 units back. Sometimes both of them are Shamans, so it just provides a lot of value to your deck. Another very good unit is Clock, because it adds additional attack speed to your damage dealer. So you can support your damage dealer with something else than just shamans. This is really helpful. I just figured if your clock is very low and your damage dealer is also not the highest, then you will be struggling on the waves 36 till 40, because even though you do much more, your damage dealer does much more damage, he can't take out the creeps because they're just too many and they have too high HP. And they also heal themselves again and put additional HP on themselves and so on. So in this matter, Reaper I think is better for the wave, but Clock adds just additional damage. If you find yourself not being able to kill the bosses, you might even take both of them units, like Reaper and Clock. Starting from wave 30, you just fill your board with Clocks and Reapers, and then you take out some creeps and also give your friends the little bit missing attack speed to take out the bosses as well. You will be lacking a little bit of mana because you're missing Summoner, but it's very strong. And if you're very low, I think this is the way to go. Just take Reaper and Clock. Since the last upgrade, there is a new unit called the Witch. I think you know that broken unit already. This is also pretty helpful to give a little bit extra damage onto the units of your friend. Just make sure you upgrade your Witch as a supporter, because upgrading the Witch also gives additional damage onto the buffs that you send to your friend. Another very good unit is the Demonologist, because the amount of mana you gain with it scales with the waves. So especially in the mid to late game, the amount of mana you gain by merging Demonologists is very high. It just needs a little bit more skill to actually make it beneficial, because I see a lot of Demonologist players that are copying tier 1 or tier 2 Demonologists. That's absolutely not worth it. It costs you more than you actually gain with these merges, so you pretty much burn money for absolutely nothing. This is a huge mistake, so make sure you only copy Demonologists that are tier 3 and above. And keep in mind, the higher wave you are, the more value you get out of it. So it can be very good in somebody that knows what he's doing. If somebody just copies shamans from tier 1 to tier 3, and from tier 3 up to tier 6 he only like copies Demonologists, you can be very, very good with it. But it's easy to do mistakes, so yeah, it's a little bit more something for advanced players, especially if you have talents on Demonologists. It can be very, very strong to gain a lot of mana. Another unit that I need to mention here is Cauldron, even though I'm not a big fan on Coop, because it's very good early game, you gain a lot of mana. Mid game it's still alright, but late games it falls off very hard. Additionally to that, you need to play it right, like completely fill your board with mana cauldrons, and you stay like this to gain a shit ton of mana. In the worst possible case, you get the debuff that your mana will disappear, and then you are stuck with nothing pretty much. And you wasted a lot of mana to actually set up the perfect board, or you had to copy the cauldrons with Harlequin instead of the shamans and so on. So I'm not a big fan, even though you can get a shit ton of mana. It's very risky to take it. Additionally to that, at the end of the run, a unit cost is like 1000 or even 1500 or 2000, and you can actually calculate how long you have to have a cauldron on your board to actually just cover its own cost. Like you drop down a unit, it costs you, let's say 2000, it gains 20 mana every few seconds, so it has to have like 100 procs of the mana gain to actually cover itself, and by then the wave 40 is already over, if you know what I mean. So early game it's very good, late game whenever the unit costs get higher, it's not as good anymore. So be careful with Cauldron. I know a lot of players are playing it, but if you have to copy Cauldron, keep in mind you always have to not copy a shaman for it. So the last one that I want to mention here is Priestess, because it does provide a lot of mana, especially early on. But the big problem here again is it doesn't scale at all. You gain like your 160 mana for each merge, which is a lot early on, but already in the mid game, when a unit costs 500 or 1000 mana and you just put down this unit, you merge two of them together and you get that 160 mana. It doesn't even cover its own costs. So this is really, I think, the worst one that I've listed up. If players don't have Harlequin, don't have Clock, don't have anything, this is really like the option to go to get at least a little bit more mana onto your board to send more shamans. I also want to talk real quick about the damage dealer part, as this is a really important part of the success of the dungeon. Right here we're running like the full damage comp. We don't have any crowd control or nothing. We just count on making everything vaporize, so we don't need anything really. It worked out, but it was very close in the end. If you want to make sure, or if you just find yourself not doing enough damage, what you can take is Bombardier instead of Harlequin or instead of Portal Keeper, whatever you feel more comfortable to set up your board with. The setup will be much harder for the damage dealer to get a very decent setup like Sky just did here, because you're missing the very great synergy from Portal Keeper and Harlequin. But in the end, it's not the end of the world, because your damage dealer deck can be much worse than in this example, because Bombardier gives you like triple the time to kill a boss. So you need to do like a third of the damage theoretically, and still will be able to kill the boss in time before Bedlam turns you around at 35, for example, because it just adds you so much time. Here RNG can fuck you up though, because if you get the debuff that the bosses are immune to CC, then yeah, it can ruin a run or two. But normally it is the way to go. If you're doing less damage than Sky here, then just go for Bombardier. My final tip for the damage dealers is the most important at the same time, and I can't stress this enough because I see so many people do this, even in my clan, even though I told this to many players 100 times, is fill your board with units before you start merging. Drop your units down till you have 15 tier 1 units. This not only gives you more control about how the board looks. Whenever you have 15 units on the board and you merge like 2 of them, and you only have like 14 units on the board again, you can actually drop down a unit and you know exactly where that unit will land, as you only have 1 free space on your damage dealer board. And if it's not the unit you want there on that space, you merge that one again and you fill your board back up, and maybe now it's the right unit. If not, just keep on merging till you get the unit on that one spot that is missing. Just fill back up your board all the time. It helps you so much to set up the perfect board. Sometimes it's close to perfect, and it's really better to be happy with the close to perfect instead of trying to get like the super perfect board and you end up fucking it up even more. So just jump over your shadow, and sometimes just put the thumbs up even though you're not 100% happy with your board. But really fill your board first before you do the first merge, and fill it back up whenever you did a merge as a damage dealer. This really helps. Same for the supporters, by the way. If you have to choose between 15 units to merge, if you only have like 6 units on the board, you probably don't have as many good options as if you had 15 units on the board. This is in PvP, in PvE, this is generally always fill your board, very important. The only moment you shouldn't really fill your board is whenever a tribunal is about to appear. Other than that, always fill your board. Feel free to rewatch this video, and this time keep an eye on my board to get a feeling on how the merging is supposed to look like. To follow all the priorities and rules that I mentioned is obviously way easier said than done. So I also did a couple of mistakes in this run. Maybe you will find them and let me know about them. Like, you fucked up at 4 minutes 22 and you fucked up at 6 minutes 42 and so on. This would be very cool, and it also means you understood the principles of supporting. So just let me know. So that's it for today's video. If you have any wishes about the content you want to see next, just put it in the comments below. If you wish me to share my knowledge in another topic, or if you just want to see if I can get through Dungeon 10 with Mime as a DPS unit, for example, or anything really, I will read all the comments and do the next video with the coolest suggestions. So let me know what you want to see, and yeah, might be your idea that will be made a video of the next time. If this video was helpful to you, or if you liked it in any way, please just take a second and hit that subscribe button. I'm very well known on Twitch for my Coop games, but I'm literally nobody on YouTube. Bruh, who the fuck are you? It would really mean a lot to me, and you will also get a notification whenever the next video is released. Thanks a lot. Last but not least, a big shout out for aFriendGaming for letting me use clips, and also for being such an awesome guy. I absolutely adore your content and your positive and authentic attitude. And I'm sure there is a parallel universe somewhere out there where we both didn't happen to be straight men and where I'm tickling you with my mustache in this very second. I'm really looking forward to see more of you in the future. The videos, I mean.
Yeah. I love whenever I have like free time in the middle of the day. Middle of the day. I'm apparently drunk on Dr. Pepper. And I get to go see Godlike Mike's stream and hang out for a minute. I love that. So, if you have time in the middle of your day, go follow Godlike Mike. And if you don't have time in the middle of your day, also go follow Godlike Mike because he deserves it.
Wait, what the